So before we have our test, let's go ahead and review some of the key concepts we've gone over this unit. Please attempt to do the review on your own, and then come watch this video to see where you got right and where you may have made some mistakes. Let's get started. Our first question asks us, which table represents y as a function of x? So it's asking us which table represents a function, basically. Remember, a function means there's only one output for every input. That's one y for every x, meaning x cannot repeat. So let's look at the tables and see which one shows that x is not repeating. In this first table, I see -5 and I see -5. That means, since these two x's are repeating, it is not a function. For the second one, I'm looking at the x's again. I see -3 right here, a -3 right here, and I see a 1 and a 1. That means 1 repeats and -3 repeats, meaning this one is not a function. This third one, I see 6, -6, 8, -8. Those are each 4 different numbers. And then we have the last one, x, so 2, 2, 2, 2. This one is not a function. So this is the only one that is a function. The next one gives us a table. The table represents some points on the graph of a linear function. So these are just, it's a graph. What is the rate of change of y with respect to x for this function? This is just a fancy way of saying, what is the slope? So we're going to use our handy dandy formula for slope. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we're going to choose 2 points on the table. I'm going to choose these 2 points. So my first value is up here. So that makes this my x1 and my y1. And this is my second point. So this makes it my x2 and my y2. So I'm going to plug these numbers in. So I have -10.5 minus 3 over 3 minus 0. So we have -10.5 minus 3 is going to give me -13.5. And 3 minus 0 is going to give me 3. Which simplified would give me -4.5. This is a reminder, domain is read from left to right, and range is read from bottom to top. This next question, number 3, asks which graph represents a function with a domain of all real numbers greater than or equal to -7 and less than 2. So domain is left to right, so I'm looking at the x-axis. And it says greater than or equal to -7 and less than 2. So on the left, I want -7 to be greater than or equal to. So I'm looking at this and -7, that's not. This one is -3. This one is -4 is the furthest left. And this one has -7 with a closed circle. So this one would be greater than or equal to. And then just to check, it has to be greater than or less than 2, my bad. So this one is an open circle and it's less than, so perfect. So this one would be the graph. So when I read this, I put -7 on the far left. So the point on the farthest left had to be -7. So this was the only one that matched. And then the one on the far right had to be less than 2. So I had to have an open circle and be 2. So this one could have been, this one matches that description, but this one didn't, and this one did. So this is the only one that fit both of those descriptions. The last question on this page says, give the domain and range of the second graph pictured in problem 3. So I'm looking at this graph right here. It wants us to give the domain, which is left to right, and the range, which is bottom to top. So for domain, I know I'm going to use the letter X. I'm going to look from left to right and decide which symbols am I using. So I see this is a closed circle, so I'm going to use less than or equal to. And then this one is an open circle, so I'm just going to use less than. Because remember, they always are going to face this direction. So on the left, it's less than or equal to. On the right, because it's an open circle, it's going to just be less than. So then I want to look at the numbers. So on the far left, I have -3. So the furthest point left is -3. And the furthest point right is 2. So my domain is -3 is less than or equal to x, less than 2. And then we have our range. So we're going to look from the bottom to the top. So from the lowest point on the graph to the highest point on the graph. So because this is the line, there's not an open circle there, I'm going to write this number. But remember, so why? So because it's a line, a solid line, we're going to use the less than or equal to symbol. We're not going to use less than because this is a solid line, meaning that this number is a part of the solution. And this number is -7. Then we go all the way up here, and the highest point is a closed circle. So we're going to also use less than or equal to again. And the highest point it reaches is 2. So our range is -7 is less than or equal to y is less than or equal to 2. Let's turn the page. Number 6 says, given f of x equals 6 times, in parentheses, 1 minus x, what is the value of f of -8? So this is asking us to evaluate, meaning it wants us to plug in -8 anywhere we see an x. So if we have 6 times 1 minus x, we're going to replace the x with -8. So we get 6 times, and in parentheses, 1 minus -8. That's going to become plus 8. So 6 times 1 plus 8. Because whenever you subtract a negative, you're adding. So we have 6 times 1 plus 8, which equals 6 times 9. 6 times 9 is 54. So I can either write my answer as 54 or f of -8 equals 54. Either of these would be correct. So this is saying whenever I plug in -8 for x, I'm going to get 54. So for number 6, it's asking us to find the slope of the line graphed below. So we're going to remember rise over run. So how far up or down divided by how far forward. So we're going to either look at the 2 points they gave us or choose 2 new points. So I'm just going to use the points they gave. So I want to see how far down from my first point does it take for me to line up with my second point. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I am going down 9 times. So that means my rise is -9. Now for the run, I'm going to see how far forward I go before I get to the point. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3. So I move over 3 times. So my run is 3. -9 divided by 3 is going to give me -3. So my slope, my rate of change, is -3. For number 7, they didn't give us 2 points, so we're going to choose our own, and we want to choose the ones that are intercepting a corner perfectly. So I'm going to choose this point and this point. But no matter which point you choose, you should always get the same slope, so it doesn't matter which point you choose. So I'm going to see how far am I going up or down. So from here to here, it's going up. So that means I'm going to go up. So 1, 2, and then I'm already in line. So my rise is +2. And my run is how many times I go over. So 1, 2, 3. So positive 2 divided by 3. That's already a simplified fraction. So just 2 over 3 is my slope, or 0.67 continuous. Our last problem, number 10. The graph shows the linear relationship between the maximum area in square feet that can be painted and the number of gallons of paint used. All this is doing is telling me that I have a graph and that this is the X, this is the Y. What is the rate of change of the maximum area painted with respect to the number of gallons of paint used? So what is the rate of change of Y with respect to X? So it's just asking me, what is the slope? So all this is just a fancy way of saying, what's the slope of this graph over here? Notice all those words can be simplified to what is the slope of here. So just let this be an example of whenever you see a bunch of words and stuff, you don't have to be intimidated, because all this asked was, what is the slope? So let's choose our 2 points. So I want to choose 0, 0. So this will be my first point. And then my second point, let's do this one. So I want to see how far up do I go over how far right. So I go up 200, 400, 600, 800. So I'm going up 800. That is my rise. So my rise is 800. And then how many times am I going over? Notice this is 1. So each one of these lines is a half. So 0.5, 1, 0.5, 2. So it goes over 2. So 800 divided by 2 is going to give me 400. So my slope is 400. So when you're taking your test, make sure you pay attention to the intervals, because sometimes people mess up and they'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, thinking they're going over 4 times. So don't do that. You have to look at the interval and see that this is 800 and this would be 2. And you would get a slope of 400.